Hello, hello, and welcome to Art Snacks. Today I am painting this little teacup and saucer that you see here. I took a picture and I'm referring to it as I'm painting on my iPad there. But there's the photo that you can see that I'm looking at for my reference. I will also include a link to a PDF if you don't have a teacup and saucer. So when you start, you just want to get your basic shapes in. Um, Ellipses, right? You want the mouth of the cup, you want your saucer, the bottom of the cup, the bottom of the saucer. They all should have about the same um, curve at the main line. So, one way to help you do that is to draw a nice straight line down the center. You can see it there. That kind of keeps everything nice and lined up. And then you just want to sketch in. I sped this up because this isn't really a sketching lesson as much as I want to just encourage you to put pencil to watercolor paper and try. Get your designs from your teacup and saucer kind of lightly drawn in, erase all those extra lines, and just have a nice outline, okay? And then what we're going to do is you're going to start with nice clean water and your brush, and we're going to lay down just a water wash in the main cup. Okay, so I'm only including the cup and the handle. I'm not doing the saucer right yet. So I'm just going to lay water down. And then from my favorite and current watercolor palette, I am using Lunar, which is one of my all-time favorite Daniel Smith watercolors. It has um, like mixed pigment in it, so it's kind of doesn't necessarily shimmer, but it changes its color and tone. It's got a few different pigments in there. It's absolutely wonderful. That is Lunar by Daniel Smith. I can link that down below as well. And so I'm just kind of laying in because my teacup and saucer have more of that gray blue tones to them. I chose to use the Lunar. A lot of times I find with teacups, especially, I tend to use raw sienna for more of a yellow tan tone, but this one has more of the grays and blues. So I kind of just laid in a little bit of that blue wash and in the saucer as well. This is the straight up Lunar now that I'm laying underneath. And because I want to acknowledge the bold shadows, right? So those bold shadows, I want to get those down. But remember, any highlights, any white that you see in your image or in your still life or in your everyday object, right? Right here you can see where my real white is that, the white light. You're going to leave that untouched. Don't put any paint there because with watercolors, we're working, the lights are really the plain watercolor paper, and the darks we layer in. So, watercolors dry a little bit lighter than when you lay them down. So, this is only really the first of probably three layers that I end up doing, at least, of the lunar color, that blue gray kind of tone. All right. So I just keep working. You can see I kind of put my paintbrush in and then I'm mixing it. I have a ton of water in the mixing palette part of that palette plate there. So I'm able to kind of just drop the water and color on and let it kind of just do its thing. All right, so now I want to do the same thing with kind of the brown, the table, quote unquote, is brown, but I want to kind of just wash that in there really lightly. I'm not too concerned about it. I do put a little bit of, and I'm using raw umber here. And I put a little bit in the teacup. While I don't have any in my photo, I will probably end up putting tea in the cup. I always think a full cup looks better. And hey, our cups are always half full, right? Never half empty. So the complement, you see, I have blues and then raw cyan or umber has a bit, it's brown, but it has a little bit more of that orange to it. So I'm working almost basically in blue and orange. They're going to complement each other. When I layer them on top of each other, they're going to make the perfect neutral. So here, I kind of layered in some of the brown, again, using that reference photo, seeing where my shadows are. Now I'm back to my blue lunar and just adding another layer into some of those darker but not quite deep shadow spaces. All right, and just kind of take your time. While you're doing this, remember to pay attention to your wets as soon as a wet touches, so if the brown table was wet and that blue was wet, they're going to bleed into each other. So you want to make sure they're dry. Here, I just sped this up because it's a lot of the same process, repeated over and over again. It's a lot of looking at that reference photo and getting your deep tones in. Here we have the reference photo up again. You can see when I pull that up really where I'm looking and I see those dark darks. And so I'm just working on getting those in with the lunar. Sometimes I think I grab a little bit of the burnt umber, like I mostly have the lunar blue on my paintbrush. I'll dip it into that raw umber and kind of put them on. Now I have my Stabilo all. This is the graphite. The red barrel is the graphite, which is much lighter than the Stabilo all, the black, okay? But this is still water soluble. So when I touch it with a paintbrush, it's gonna do a nice little lovely thing. It's a little bit darker. It's gonna give me the nice actually gray lines of the pattern of my cup. So I'm just going to kind of sketch in, and these flowers are weird. They're kind of like uh a dandelion like, right? They've got the little flow everywhere. So I'm just going to kind of do a faint line around to get my base down for these little firecracker flowers is all I could think of. All right, so there you see I have a fine line pen. And now I bring in my moon glow. So I have the lunar, but I'm also bringing in moon glow, which is another all-time favorite Daniel Smith watercolor. It is a purple that changes color. It's amazing. It is the best shadow. It is the best gray. It is wonderful to mix into any colors you're working with to give it just kind of tone it down. But I use a mix of the lunar and the moon glow to kind of get my pattern in. And then going back in again, I'm using those two tones to get some nice, fine, distinct lines between my saucer and the table, and between the cup and the saucer. All right, so it's just kind of working back and forth. You have to have patience in between each of these steps. I make sure that things are dry so that they don't go running into each other. If they do, it's not a big deal. You just kind of grab a little tissue or a cloth and you just splotch it up because water erases watercolor for the most part. I can't get back to that beautiful white, but I can definitely um, bring some colors up or lighten them. So now, again, just another layer to get that deep tone in. Now that I have the browns, now that I have the, florals in there, I can really see what tones I need to pop in there. Another thing that you can do always to help you if you're having a hard time just making the distinction between lights and darks and all of the middle tones, which can be very difficult, print your image in black and white. Just change it to black and white. I've always had my students do that all through elementary, middle, and high school students, adult students, it helps so much. Again, just taking the Stabilo graphite, kind of putting in that detail. Again, I want the silver that's on the rim of the cup and saucer. I want those to pop in. So I'm going back in the Moon Glow with my fine liner brush over the graphite. And I kind of go around the rim. I pop those florals out, those little firecracker florals out a little bit more. Because on the cup and saucer, there are darker, definite darker ones, and they have a little red in the middle of them, and more of a light gray. So I want to make sure I'm replicating that. The fine liner brush lets me really get some fine little spray marks in there, and I really enjoy it. Here you can see I'm going back over the Stabilo graphite. I do have some of the lunar, nope, Moon Glow paint. It's kind of a blend of both by now, actually. And just kind of looking at the foot reference photo, I don't want to outline it all, right? There's going to be some white, there's going to be some empty spaces, but I want to get that fine line kind of over everything where I see the shadows, the darker tones, and the distinction, right, between the handle and the cup itself, like I'm working on over here, or the cup, the rim, the background, and the table. All right. As I work in these layers, it all starts to come forward, and you're going to start to see that how we're making the distinction, but we're not outlining the whole thing, right? This isn't, I don't want this to look like a cartoon or an illustration, kind of more of a whimsy. I want that watercolor effect, the softness to be there. By using the Moon Glow over the graphite, it definitely can establish more of that silver tone. I have a silver pen that I could do the same thing with, but I kind of wanted to keep it all watercolor. Here, again, grabbing the browns, making sure that I'm putting the table so it's distinct. I'm adding that brown. Remember, it's got the orange tone to it over the blues. Both of these colors work beautifully together to make the perfect complement, make that perfect neutral tone to give me the shadows, to give me the deeper tones. And just kind of playing in here. This is just a little bit of brown. I still have the fine liner brush, so uh, it definitely was not the right brush to be using to add in the shadow, but it was kind of just in my hand, and you know what? It gave there's, like, some lines there, it helps it look a little bit more like the wood, it's kinda cool. And then I come in and get a bigger brush, and we've gotta put that tea in, right? Again, half full, our cups are never half empty. We are all blessed, and, even if it is with a, fuller cup of tea. Did you see how I used that cloth there? It's just lifting up, it bled a little bit. Here I grab my favorite Stabilo All in a nice deep red tone, and I'm just adding that little tiny bit of dots, the center of the flowers, just to add a nice finishing touch. So happy with this. The colors all looked great together. I'll get a photo up here for you at the end, and I hope you enjoy and paint your own teacup.